Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I'm so excited that you're with us on the show today because I'm here with Ashish Patel, the publisher at NowThis Media and the Executive-in-Residence at Lerer Hippeau Ventures. Thank you for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Can we start out with a glimpse into a life in the day of Ashish so we can get a little bit of an idea of what goes on behind the scenes for you guys?
Yeah, totally. So my role, I have a dual role, as you mentioned. So I'm the publisher at NowThis. At NowThis, what we do is we create short-form news videos that we distribute natively over social feeds. So as opposed to kind of like the traditional digital model of using Facebook and Twitter and other platforms to link and drive back to your site, we're directly engaging users in feed. My role as publisher here basically means that I'm ultimately responsible for the distribution of our content and providing as much consumption around our videos as possible. So I operate two teams. One is the social insights team, where it's our primary feedback loop for our producers, where we're looking for signals in the data to help look for what in our video production is driving more viewership, more sharing, etc. And we try to provide a very tight real-time feedback loop with our producers and give them as much information. I mean, they're extremely talented and we don't have to tell them much, but we try to give them little tips and tricks where we can to help increase retention in our videos, increase the reach of our videos, and make them travel farther. The second team that I manage is the publishing team, which is essentially just programming assets across all of the channels we're on. So we're on at no less than 10 platforms. We have 4 Chinese platforms. We do a lot of assets and translations. Everything that we create is built specifically for certain social platforms and for social endpoints. So it is quite a challenge in terms of coordination, but we look to really try to program really appropriate news stories for each of the platforms that we're on. My second role is Executive-in-Residence at Lerer Hippeau Ventures, where I act kind of as an internal consultant for the portfolio companies that we invest in. We're mainly media and e-commerce focused, with also investments in financial tech and other sectors. Very online first companies, mostly New York based. Over there, try to help out companies where I can, be available to advise in any way that I can help out, and then also help with a little deal flow. So a typical day, there's a lot of things going on, but generally I'm coming in, working with the insights team, looking to see if there are any optimizations that we can feed through, and then working with the publishing team to just make sure that we're consistently pacing out a good flow of assets. And then every now and again, we'll have a call from a Lerer Hippeau portfolio company, and we'll work with those guys.
Very cool. So I want to start out with your process a little bit more at NowThis. What happens when you hear about a story that you think is going to be great? What's the process like?
Sure. So we have a variety of ways to discover content and a variety of sources that kind of act as our pipeline into selecting what stories to cover. But one thing is we have a lot of producers that are consistently using listening tools. One of our favorites is Data Miner. That's a tool that we use to look for activity on Twitter. We have CrowdTangle, which is another tool where we're looking at mainly working on Facebook, looking at what's trending. Facebook Signal is another great tool. But I guess in terms of our inputs for story selection, it's a combination of what's trending. It's a combination of just core issues that we care about and what in the audience that we've built cares about. So those tend to be a little bit more liberal social issues, such as gender equality, sexual preference equality, racial equality, marijuana and drug legalization, healthcare, affordable education, things like that. So we have a lot of producers that are consistently looking for stories in those verticals that our audience really cares about. And then we look at historical data as well to kind of look at what types of stories our audience reacted to, what types of categories they're generally more interested in. And, from that point, we have an editor, lead editor, Sarah Frank, as well as a few senior producers that will help determine the appropriate locations for those stories and what we should cover. One thing that we really pride ourselves on here is creating what we call platform appropriate content. So that's really kind of has two aspects to it. One is that visually it looks like something that is natural and organic to the experience in that certain platform. So if you look at our Snapchat stories, it's very different than what you would see on Instagram or what you would see on Twitter or Facebook. The second thing about being platform appropriate is really about thinking about the user's context of usage. We all use Twitter for a totally different reason than Snapchat, for a totally different reason than Instagram, and you're looking for different things on those platforms. So it's very rare that we'll take one story, unless it's like a very large breaking news story, and chop it up and put it across a bunch of different platforms. We really think about why the person's there. So Instagram, for example, if you look at Now This News on Instagram, you won't see too many hard news stories. And it's because, the common user there is there to look at pictures of food and clothes and their friends and family and not really looking for hard news. So if you see something like Boko Haram kidnaps 22 young girls on Instagram and your primary reaction mechanism is a big red heart button, it doesn't feel right. So what we really try to do is, think about our audiences, what they're doing on those platforms, and try to give them something that makes sense there.
I love it, and I think that's why you guys have seen so much success, because, as you were saying, so it feels right to me. If I'm seeing something that's lighthearted as I'm scrolling Instagram, of course I'm going to like it and tag my friends.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a lot of it, and where we see kind of other publishers or marketers in general kind of miss it, is creating one asset for television or for desktop and then just chopping it up, and it's not really considering why people are on those platforms and what they could want. So we really take a focus of thinking about the consumer first, and like our goal, we are a distributed media company. We distribute directly over social. Don't link back to a site. It's we do have. We shut down our site in 2014, and we're thinking about ways to bring it back. If you go to nowthisnews.com right now, you'll see an exclusive interview we did with Biden, and likely moving forward, we'll kind of use the site as like one-off executions. But it's about distributing over all these platforms and trying to bring the content to where the audience is. And we want to make sure that we're not trying to force inorganic behaviors to what they're actually doing, but really just be additive to what they're doing on those platforms. And hopefully, we want a user to look at Now This News as the number one news source on whatever social platform they're on.
So when it comes to that, there's so many things. So like I might be on Facebook and I just see the video and I engage with it and I'm really happy about it. But there's so many things that happened in the background to not only produce the video, but to make my reaction possible. Is it all data, Ashish, or is there ever a little bit of gut that you think people are going to love a story?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say, I would say that data is really important, but to make something shareable, which is really what we're trying to do for these social feeds. And just from a distribution tactic, we want as many people to see the news that we think is important, for a specific demographic. Sharing as a mechanism helps us get that message out there a bit more. And an algorithm's never going to create something shareable. So the human element and really enticing an emotional reaction, specifically on Facebook, we've seen really helps move pieces in terms of sharing. So no, there's definitely, it's a good mix. I would say that we use data to kind of, more than anything, flag inefficiencies. And one way that just kind of jumping into our insights process, one thing that we do that I think is very simple but fairly unique to us is we focus a lot more of our analysis on our lower performing content as opposed to our viral content. So if we have a video that goes over 100 million and one over 50 million, one over 20 million, virality is so variable that we can't build a strategy around it. So our goal is to look for more consistent learnings in our lower performers and eliminate those. So basically, the less poor performing pieces we have, the better the chance we have for a high performer. The way that we use the data is to kind of look for common trends and look for correlations to what's actually driving viewership. And then it ultimately comes down to the data doesn't give you a solution; it flags a problem. We have to have a human hypothesis. So my team will work with the producers and the editors, and we'll think about potential solutions. So, for example, we'll see, okay, this video, we're seeing that videos that have longer retention rates are traveling farther in feed. This video has a really small retention rate. Let's look into it, and we'll sit down and really take these videos apart and see, okay, maybe we didn't paste the text fast enough on this card, or maybe it is too much text or too little text, or not. We don't have any subtitles or something like that. We'll create hypotheses and then we'll test them. Right now I'm specifically talking to Facebook, but we'll create 2 assets, for example, like one with more text, one with less text, and then we'll test that using Facebook dark ads to see what works better. Once we see clear correlations over a series of tests, we'll ladder that into our actual strategy. But yeah, I mean, coming back to your original question, the data is important, but it just kind of provides a guide. Ultimately, the creative output of the producers is what is truly making our videos great.
And for you personally, what's the most exciting part of the process? What do you love?
For me, it's more, it's kind of a puzzle to solve. So that's something that I'm, seeing positive results when you're seeing something that isn't working and you can workshop it into a positive result. Like, that's really exciting. So, ultimately it just comes down to problem solving. And I think that that's the most interesting aspect for me personally, at least.
And as you reflect on the last couple of years and you think of those learnings, have there been any that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, so previous to NowThis, I used to be the head of social at Vice, and the style of content that we're doing, the length of content is widely different. So I remember being at Vice, and Vice obviously does like very longer form, in-depth documentary video. And we were talking to YouTube about setting up an original creator channel at that point. Everything they said was make everything short form, 2 to 3 minutes, etc. And at Vice, what we did was, put really massive long form documentaries into YouTube. And sure enough, we had a lot of viewership around that and really high retention. So coming into NowThis, and where Facebook is our primary platform, we started testing out native video and looking at lengths, and all my assumptions were kind of holding from the YouTube lesson that we can do long form, we can do more in depth, etc. We tried it out on Facebook, and much shorter lengths were really working, and that's where I really started to think about different platforms as different experiences. The fact that Facebook is delivering most of its video in feed autoplay is a huge factor. You have to think about where users are interacting with your content. So that kind of was like the first big surprise that really helped started to lay the foundation of this distributed media landscape, and like really thinking about each platform as its own product.
I love that. So for you then, when you're on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter, what makes a great video?
So for me personally, I love sports highlights, so that always helps. But I think it depends on each platform. But ultimately, our view on media consumption in general, specifically to mobile, is that the trend is going towards video. That it's harder to read on mobile, that it's harder to keep attention on your phone and read an article. So video is definitely the primary format. What makes video good for me specifically is being able to succinctly deliver a story and an emotional payoff, whether that's making me feel happy or sad or emotional or smarter. or enraged. Those are the types of things that I kind of feel like is an impactful, good video.
And as you analyze them and work to iterate, have you come out with any core learnings on diction, the way people want to be spoken to?
Um, I mean, nothing that I would say that we would, kind of quantify, but qualitatively, one of the biggest learnings that we have is that your best bet is to get someone who you're trying to target as an audience member to talk to that audience. The people creating content for Facebook, for example, very much match the profile of who our user is on Facebook. Snapchat is very similar. Our Snapchat team is very young. They're like 18, 19, 20 years old. And the audience on the other side is that same age. They speak the same language. One of the things that we've kind of really figured out, and I think one massive misconception that the traditional media industry has is that young people, millennials, youth don't care about news, and we don't think that that's true. We just think that the news is on a screen that most young people don't watch, and that when a CNN or some of these traditionals try to do something like Snapchat or try to do something in social or try to attract a younger audience, they kind of dumb things down or like, hey, let's throw a skateboard in there. Kids love it. It just comes off as very authentic and patronizing. So it's just what we're trying to do.
Help.
Exactly. So what we're trying to do is just really have it's kind of like creating content that we would share ourselves because we think we're the audience.
And when it comes to those social networks, if you had an opportunity to make any change to a social network of your choice, what would you want to see happen?
So I would say that if I can make any change, I guess it's hard because I can't directly tell you what the change would be, but it would be on Twitter, and I would emphasize the video product. I think that they're probably trying to. We know that they're trying to push video more earnestly. You've probably seen a little bit more video in your feed, but I don't think that they've figured out the best way to handle video in that consumption experience. And maybe it's not appropriate, but I would love to just kind of help them figure that out or see if we can figure that out. If you want something very specific, right now native video, uploaded video in Twitter doesn't play expanded in TweetDeck, and that's hugely frustrating. We don't like to have people click on things. So if you're sitting there on TweetDeck, and you can assume a lot of the journalism industry is following us, they're just seeing a feed of links, which if they were seeing a feed of video would be a lot more
different.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love if TweetDeck would enable video play.
All right, I'll do my best to make that happen. 2 more questions for you, Ashish, before we have to go. If you could have any question, any personal question you have about social answered in the future, what would you want to know?
I guess I'd want to know. Ultimately, it comes down to network sustainability. Is Snapchat going to be a sustaining platform? Like, I really, truly believe that Facebook is going to have a lot of longevity because it's so much more than a social network at this point. With Open Graph, with what they're doing with infrastructure plays, they're kind of becoming, like kind of what the cable companies were, where our role is to fill the pipes. But I would love to see something like, or something like Snapchat. If we're investing a lot of time in producing for Snapchat, are the users going to stay there? How is the demographic going to switch? So again, like a lot of the way we think about creating content and distributing content comes down to efficiency. If we spend time and money making something, we wanted to have a decent audience that we can potentially monetize, get some kind of return on. And if we're investing a lot in Snapchat right now and it disappears like an Ello or a Peach overnight, what are we supposed to do? And we're really good at kind of definitely pivoting and really good at finding where the audience is. But yeah, if I had any question, it's just kind of like the sustainability of these networks.
The last one that we'll go with doesn't have to do with audience numbers because you are the only audience. The whole team's taking the day off and creating the sports video of your choice. What do you want the story to be?
Honestly, yeah, no, I would, I would love one of my teams winning a championship to be the story. But from what I know about social video and what I like to see, it's all about really bringing action up first. So some kind of NBA highlight reel featuring a lot of nasty dunks is what I would love to see.
All right, well, you got to go give them the memo. They're off today. They got to get working.
Definitely.
Well, Ashish, it's been such a pleasure to spend time with you, and I appreciate all the honest insight and exciting glimpse into what life is like at NowThis. You guys are doing incredible work. What's the best way for everyone tuning in to stay up to date with you guys and follow everything?
Yeah, so basically, if you're on a social platform, we're probably there too. So look for our handles, NowThis News. On Facebook, we have a bunch of different channels as well. NowThis Election, that's focused on the 2016 election. NowThis Future, which is our science and tech channel. NowThis Entertainment. We have NowThis Weed, which is about marijuana legalization and stories around marijuana. And then we just launched yesterday NowThis Booze. So if you're 21 and over in the States, feel free to like that page, and we'll give you some really awesome cocktail recipes.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.